You really need people in your corner who are someone who has the life that you want to live, who can offer you insights into how to get there. This might be an unpopular opinion, but you don't need to be wealthy or have wealthy friends and family in order to get amazing mentors. I didn't have the wealthy, connected parents. If you are willing to put yourself out there and find someone who wants to give back in some way, there are so many successful people. They want to help.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Ways to Wealth. Today I am joined by Nathan Frater, who is the owner of Backbone. Is that the right? How would we describe your business? And how about you just do a better job than me at introducing you? So what's the TLDR about you, Nate?
So my name's Nathan Frater, close, but no cigar. But I would say I'm the co-founder. My wife is the other owner of the business, and while I started it before she was involved, it really became what it is today when we decided to go into business together. And I lead up the strategy. So we said that our particular flavor of marketing is creative-led, performance-based. So Lucy is head of creative. I'm really the head of performance, and together we create things that make money on the internet.
Nice. Interesting. So, how did you get there? At what point in your career did you know that you were going to be a business owner and you were actually going to want to build something for yourself and have, I guess your own business? Were you always entrepreneurial or?
Yeah, I think if you ask my parents, they would say from a very early age I was entrepreneurial, and they didn't understand it because they were both ministers in the church, and I didn't grow up in a business family. Probably the polar opposite, but I did grow up with leadership being modeled. That, mum and dad were very much, if you want something, if you feel a calling, you go for it. And I felt called to business from as long as I can remember. I had little hustles, and mum and dad were really good at just being like, if you want something, we're not going to pay for it because we don't have the money. You go get it.
Yeah, typical kind of pastoral upbringing then.
Very typical. Moved around a lot, and very, very supportive parents who didn't have money. And so if you wanted it, you went and got it.
Yeah. Interestingly, though, it is quite entrepreneurial in action, isn't it?
Yeah.
That sort of upbringing, because like you said, you move around a lot, you meet a lot of people, and you've got to somehow make all the lights and everything turn on in a model that is, I guess, optional, right? A lot of the revenue generated and the resources are gifts. And you have to kind of hustle in that regard as well. And like you said, there's obviously a strong focus on leadership, which I guess is a bit of a stage 2 to most people's entrepreneurial journey. The first step is kind of that yearning to create something or build something that's bigger than yourself, and then you have to deal with the whole leadership side. So it's kind of interesting, but also kind of makes sense, right? I know a lot of people in that space that, because that adaptable, given the changes that kind of come forth. Oh, that's really cool. Did you always work for yourself, or did you have any career before starting Backbone?
I would always say that I've never had a real job. So
Yeah.
I, from a very young age, I just said yes to, if there was an opportunity, I'd just say yes. And what it meant is I got myself into some very interesting positions where I would just be selling stuff. I would be, I was the kid selling the tickets to the all-age raves when I was 14 years old. If I saw a way to make a bit of money, I'd be like, yeah, I'll give it a go. And so I did all of the classic things. I worked in hospo, I waited tables, I worked nightclubs. I was always doing the classic jobs. I had the sales jobs. I did door-to-door sales. I cut my teeth on that. It was painful. I don't know how to sell door-to-door. And so I did all of the classic jobs you do when you're a teenager trying to make money, paper runs, farmers markets, did all of the stuff. But every time I ended up like in a job, I'd always find there was some kind of opportunity to go further. And so I found myself at 15 years old running a farmer's market for this farmer who'd given me a job. And I really owe a lot of what I've got now to him, because he just said, one day I was 14 years old and he was like, I can't make it to the markets this weekend. And I was like, I reckon I could do it without you. And
Nice.
and he went away and we had a really good sales day. I sold as much, organic meat from a chili bin at a farmer's market as he would have sold. And he was just like, oh, you can do it. And so within like a few months, there was another market stand opening, and I was one of the first members of the Britomart Farmers Market when it was in a gravel car park before Hotel Brit was there. And, 15 years old, he had me down there cooking on a barbecue and selling organic meat to, the apartment dwellers who had returned home from London and knew what organic meat was. And so from as early as I can remember, I really wanted to know how things worked. I really wanted to understand like more about everything I did. And what it meant was eventually I wanted to do it myself.
Yep. It's quite profound, those early people that give you time and mentorship without you really asking for it. And these organic relationships that are built. I know that my career has been, well, my life really was kind of a series of people that helped me out and went the extra mile without me really asking them to, or them even getting anything out of it, for sure. So it's always great when you have those people that can help propel you to the next level, or help challenge you, or give you that autonomy to do that.
Well, you need it. You really need people in your corner who are ultimately, my lens on a mentor is someone who has the life that you want to live, who can offer you insights into how to get there. And you don't, this might be an unpopular opinion, but you don't need to be wealthy or have wealthy friends and family in order to get amazing mentors. And I did it. I didn't have the wealthy connected parents, and I didn't necessarily, I went to a good school, but I wasn't at King's College, but I still, if you are willing to put yourself out there and find someone who wants to give back in some way, there are so many
most people want to give back in some way.
Want to help.
Yeah. It's an innate thing that we want as humans, almost. Is to be able to help.
It's very fulfilling to help. It's, for me, it's one of the, I love it when someone comes to me and they're like, how did you get to where you are? How did you do it? Or what did you learn? Or where was the pain? Or where was the joy? I'll happily share anything, because I was so lucky and so blessed to have, a multitude of people in my life give me these little shortcuts. There's never a handout. It was never, here's some money to start a business. It was, here's something you can have a go at yourself.
Did you? It's kind of interesting, the meat market thing as well. Because I think it's always good to have, not that they're crappy jobs, but some really, really kind of to the ground. I don't know, grounded jobs. I remember working. 3 of mine were working in a sunbed shop. Hilarious. When I was 13. Obviously, being a kitchen person and the old waiting, that was early. And then the worst one was being a car washer in England when I was quite young. That sucked because it was so cold, and it was an industrial car washing gig. We've all done the walk around your local area and do a bit of car washing, but this was a proper one, and it was hard work, but also it was cold. But I think it's good to do those jobs, to be honest. Whereas
you need to build a bit of, and I think one of the things that I'm really grateful for was when I was at school, pocket money stopped at a very young age in our family. It was like, if you're old enough to walk, you're old enough to have a paper run. If you can walk to the dairy to buy, sweets and drinks, then you can walk around the neighborhood and drop off newspapers. And so, at 10 years old, I was walking around Papakura dropping off, the local courier rag because I wanted a bit of extra money. And what it meant is my expectation all through high school was that, like, I would have high school and I would also be working because I just wanted stuff. And it was like, there was no choice. It was, if I wanted the laptop or if I wanted the new phone, if I wanted the thing, then I had a job. And so, I finished school on a Friday and I'd walk to the butcher's shop, and start packing up orders for the weekend. And I'd work Saturday and Sunday. I'd go home from Auckland down to where my parents were, out of Auckland, and spend Sunday with them, and I'd be back on the school bus Monday morning. Like, weekends weren't a thing, which prepared me really well for starting companies where,
where there's no work-life balance at the start,
Yeah, sometimes you got to work 90 to 100 hours a week, and I did for probably too long.
Yeah. So remind me how long Backbone's been going now?
So I'd have to look, but I think 10 years this month.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's 9 or 10 years this month. I haven't actually looked. So we've been going for a while. It started.
Yeah, so 9 years and 1 month is the LinkedIn story. I just checked. But typically there's a build up.
Yeah. There's the we started it over some beers at a mate's house, and we're like, we could do social media marketing better than heaps of people, and it kind of morphed from there into what it is today. And over time, there were other guys involved at the beginning, and I bought both of them out over time because I wanted to take it, further. I wanted to do more. I wanted it to be bigger, and I had a higher degree of commitment to where it was going. And so at different stages, bought out the original kind of business partners in the old company, and then it formed what it is today. Really, about 5 years ago was when Lou and I were like, let's do this together, like,
Right.
let's go build this. I'd convince my girlfriend at the time to start her own agency. We kind of always intended that once we were like, oh, we're going to be together forever, it was like, well, then I guess we're doing business together forever. And I knew that if she'd never started something from scratch, she'd look at what I do and she'd be like, do you even work? You just walk around on the phone having yarns all day. And so I kind of was like, pushed her into trying to start her own agency. She got that to 6 figures. And then we're like, cool, let's bring them together. And I knew at that point that she would no longer be looking at me being like, you're just walking around yarning. She'd be like, God, I couldn't spend the 20 hours on the phone a week that you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's kind of that strength piece of who does what and where are the strengths at, and like, how do you complement each other and how do you keep that open book of communication and make sure that everyone's on the same page and motivated. And I think, like, going through that starting phase is super helpful. Because I would say it's, the first 3 years, it sucks. Typically, there's so many problems. You don't have the systems in place. So even as you grow, the growing pains are awful. And it usually takes at least 2 years to really know where you're at, where you sit in the market. And then you kind of gets a little bit nicer over time. And then 10 years passes and it's good. And everyone's like, wow. And it's like, well, yeah. And that's when they become, or things are seemingly overnight successes, even though, typically it's a decade of pretty hard work to kind of get into a really nice situation with the business. Even in venture, I think you see a lot of expectations of kind of 5 years and then it's great. And I've not really seen it other than a few kind of outliers, like, for example, Clubhouse scaled really quickly through the pandemic and got a really nice acquisition offer that they didn't take. I bet they're wishing they did now. But like, those kind of viral businesses are just not typically what you get, and the expectation is not that, but it's close to that in the industry around business in general, but I'd say especially in kind of anything tech related and startups especially. I think there's just because so few people actually build something from 0 to 1, there's a misconception around the time and effort and blood, sweat, and tears it takes. And even building a business that is known, you know the path, because loads of people have done it before. There's still a whole process there.
Yeah, it would be. I think going back and doing it again, I could probably build our business to the same size as it is now in a year. That's the crazy thing. Like if I was to go do it again, it'd be 12 months and would be the size we are with the team we've got at the moment. But you can't get that doing it your first time. I think that's what this messaging out there and the stories that get told and sold are the fast exits, the rapid growth, and the overnight success. And I think, like my own personal story, I think will be very interesting because, we'll sell one of our we've got a few companies. We'll sell one of them one day. We've got one of them at the moment that we're building, and the goal is to sell it, in 4 or 5 years. And we've got a target price. And if we sell it for that target price, it will make the news. And it'll be like, oh, look at this, built this company in 4 years and, sold it for, almost 8 figures. And all of a sudden it's like, that will be the story that's told. The story that won't be told is that I paid myself $6 to $7 an hour, working 70 to 80 hours a week for a decade before I took a proper living wage. Like that story is not the bit that will be told. The story that will be told is this other company that we spun up after identifying a market need with the collective experience of 100 years. The people involved in that, we have 100 years of business experience. It's like, that's not going to be talked about. It'll be like, company sells for 8 figures in 4 years.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And like, there's a little bit of a kind of underestimation, perhaps, of the actual compounding nature of relationships that you build up, especially in your primary venture. The goodwill, the trust, the systems that you're leveraging, basically, to hack your way to a faster outcome, because you've got you're leaning really on infrastructure of essentially a holding company, very much so like us. With our holding company.
But and infrastructure, right? You talk about infrastructure and compound, like the relationship infrastructure you build after being in market for 10 years, and longer. I find that, you talked about how 3-4 years it starts getting easier. The deals we have at the moment that make us the most money are confirmed over a text message exchange. And then it's like, do you want to launch this campaign? Sure. What's the commission on it? $5,000 a pop. Sweet. Done. It'll be live in 3 days. Like, that's the contract. But it's only, you don't get that in your first couple of years. You get that by dealing with someone on repeat for 5-6 years. And then, you can move a lot faster and make a lot more money with a much higher degree and level of trust.
So you talked a little bit about there's a few paths I'd like to go down here. One is I would like to maybe spend some time on, how you're leveraging Backbone to basically spin out your own ventures. And I think actually a lot of agencies want to do this, and I think a lot of agencies try, because it just makes total sense, right? You're like, well, I've got this machine. If you're good, it works. And if you you're very considered in what you try to do.
Yeah.
Right. I think those are the two things. If you're good and if you're very considered and find a gap in the market where you're like, okay, understand the gap, understand the machine, put it together. That's a great opportunity for everyone. But then also perhaps how have you guys stood apart? And then you talked a bit about the commission structure, and you talked about performance-based marketing. So what is the business model, and what's the kind of unique selling point about Backbone that kind of gives you guys this leverage and this kind of opportunity to be so successful?
Yeah, we cut our teeth as a social media agency. That's what we started as.
Yeah.
Just did social media posts. I was one of the first people in New Zealand to run Facebook ads.
Right.
It was like when I started running Facebook ads, there's a system called Power Editor, and you uploaded a CSV of the ads in the media you wanted to buy. And it was not part of Facebook. It was separate to Facebook.
Right.
And they accessed the back end, and you bought ads, and you could do incremental like 5-cent bids per ad and stuff. It was wild.
Right.
And you didn't know what your return on ad spend was. All you know was you'd spend a bit of money and you'd turn around, there'd be money in your bank account. And
Yep.
and so I'd kind of always been doing Facebook. I dropped out of uni because I argued with my lecturers because they were telling me online advertising was a fad and it was never going to be a thing. And I kind of went, "Well, hang on, I'm paying for my nights out by selling things on Facebook. Like, you can't tell me this isn't a thing and I can't put it in a media plan." And so I kind of got a bit disillusioned. I was like, yeah, I'm out. This isn't for me, right? I want to be on the bleeding edge of what I'm doing, and you can't get that in a marketing university. And I'm sure that's changed now, but at the time, very different world. And so I had always had this vision of like, for building the agency that I wish I'd had when my last company was failing, and
Right.
because it didn't work out, and my sister and I, we lost a lot of money in it, and walked away from it, and I was like, I wish I'd had a better partner in my corner. I wish I had a better marketing partner who could have delivered actual commercial marketing results. So I went on a bit of a mission. I was like, I'm going to build a marketing agency that operates 100% on performance. And what I learnt was that it was, I don't know if I can swear on this, it was a clusterfuck. You attract needy, desperate clients who don't have product market fit. And the ones that do have product market fit, they're not going to pay you 100% on performance because they know it's going to scale aggressively when you turn the tap. And so we found that the performance deals, they didn't work. And then when they really worked, people didn't want to pay the invoice because they went, I paid you $4,000 this month and you want 40 grand this month. What did you do that was more this month? And you're like, I spent 6 months trying to figure out your funnel. They never saw it. And so, well, this is kind of, we're talking 6 years ago, 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And I've seen a lot of people coming out being like, we're New Zealand's first performance agency. And like, we weren't even the first. We saw other people doing it and went, that's a model that could work. But it was too hard to find the perfect client that was at the perfect stage. So what we did is we never want to lose that that commerciality, right? That integrity in what we do.
Skin in the game.
Skin in the game, right? But what we realized is we could do that by just really championing our ideas. We could do that by sitting down with a client and fighting for our beliefs based on the success of their company. We could still have that performance nature to what we do by essentially arguing with clients and being, a customer is not always right. In fact, the customer is usually wrong. That's why they come and pay experts like us. Right. And so we do have deals. We do, when the right client and the right thing comes along, when we've validated that their offer is going to work in market, then we open up opportunities for performance. And so the way that shows up is a multitude of offers. We'll take equity in a company. We will take a pay per lead. We will take a pay per closed deal. We will take a percentage of gross profit after ad spend. And then we've got a deal we're structuring at the moment where we're going to get paid a percentage of the exit price above $1 value when that company sells.
Right.
And so, but with all of that happening, we still take a retainer. The bonus is above and beyond cost of materials. And it's for what we do that's better than you'd get from, young 19-year-old spun up a social media agency in his bedroom that can run Facebook ads. Like, you're not getting, ultimately now I've been working since I was 15 in this space. You're not getting 18 years of experience from new guy who's figured out a great ChatGPT prompt.
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, you're kind of a bit of a veteran now in the game. And even last time
I feel like a child still.
Yeah. I asked my dad something similar anyway recently, and he said he kind of still feels the same as when he was young. So clearly, we just all get to a stage, right, where we realize that no one really knows.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're all just muddling through.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. I mean, in terms of I think you're asking about like how the equity works as well, right? So
Well, that's in that. Yeah, I guess that's quite a natural and organic follow on. Is obviously how you guys are now starting to build what I would call long term value for your business, because I would say that the exit opportunity for a good marketing agency is a multiple of profit. Not that
minimal one,
not
but
that interesting. Not that not that interesting in terms of long term wealth. But these businesses have, and you'll know because you're living it, have incredible opportunities to generate great cash flow.
yeah.
They can be very profitable cash flow businesses. So you're kind of saying, hey, I'm thinking of this in a lot longer term view. That's why I'm taking some risk. I'm at risk because I'm basically taking cost, maybe plus a small margin as my base. But all of my upside is really in equity I take or profit share I'm essentially taking from success of campaigns, and then taking that one step further and going, actually, we're going to potentially even incorporate our own ventures.
Mm. Yeah. 100. Yeah. You kind of nailed it there. There's not a great multiple of profit on selling an agency. And I originally was like, I'm going to sell this agency for millions of dollars. And then I sat down with a mentor of mine who was just like, what do you mean? They're not worth anything. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I need to reorient. And Lucy, my wife, she is very commercially minded. I'm very entrepreneurial. She's very commercially minded. And we take a very different lens of the world. And she said something to me once. She said, what if the business just existed to buy us assets? Like, what if the purpose of the agency was to buy us assets, to acquire assets and long-term income generating activities? And so we went, that's actually, for me, that makes sense. And for her, that speaks to her values and to her belief systems and to her long-term desires. And so we went, we need to build a house. We need to stop paying rent. And so we were looking at moving to Wanaka at the time. And so we built and designed our own house. We worked with a builder, obviously, but we designed it ourselves with the objective of maximizing the value of the piece of land that we had and leapfrogging from first-time buyers into a higher level of equity. And so that was like the first, let's say, extraction of capital from the agency to form an asset.
Right. Yeah.
And then the venture side of things is going, the agency makes profit. If we maintain lifestyle creep, then that profit can be invested into other assets. And so long term, we don't, you talk about long term. I talk to people and they talk about long term and they think 5-10 years. I'm like, we have a 40-year plan.
Right.
And we're just executing on a 40-year plan. And at year 10, we want a $10 million company with 10 employees, right? And that's what we want. 10, 10, 10, 10. Like by the time we're 40, we want a $10 million turnover business with 10 employees that is generating enough cash to acquire assets. And can't do that with an agency, but we can do that with an agency that also has a small portfolio of companies that it owns.
Yeah.
And so when you zoom out, and you go, what if I'm not looking at a 2-year goal? What if I'm looking at this 40-year plan? And the 40-year plan is to own a decent sized holding company that allows us to employ, some really awesome people and create some really great companies and build an amazing life for people around us. Like, that's an inspirational thing to aim for, but 2 years doesn't work.
No, because nothing takes 2 years.
Nothing good.
Nothing good takes 2 years. That's
Nothing
right.
good takes 2 years. It takes 2 years to get engaged and plan a good wedding, as I just found out. And that was good. That was amazing. But it's not significant. Things that require large amounts of energy can result in something quite significant. And so we just zoomed out quite a bit. And really there's a bit of an ego slap for me of being told that my baby, this business that I've poured in, at this point, this was 5 years ago. I've poured 5 years of my life into it. I've bought out business partners, basically worked for, literally, like, honestly, $5 or $6 an hour for 5 years, like
Totally.
unfathomably small amounts of money. And to be told it was never going to be worth anything, I was like, oh shit, where to from here? And the answer was, what if its purpose is to generate just cash? It just generates cash, and we can use that cash to invest in other things.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I always say this, and it probably gets boring for the listeners, but Charlie Munger says that cash flow is that cash is oxygen.
Yeah.
And you just want a lot of oxygen, and then you can basically give other people or other ventures oxygen if you have great cash flow. So it makes total sense to me. I love it because it's not something that is really thought about too much as well. And I think that we've done it actually personally, where we've shown people, like, there was this great guy, and it's awesome actually, because he's one of our private members in our organization, and we had a session because he got pre-approval on the house, and this guy's a great engineer, got a great role at a great company. I mean, he must be saving 80% of his income at the moment because he's flatting, and he got pre-approval on the house. And then we were doing the numbers because we got this net worth tracker thing that we do with our members, where we kind of help them forecast out the future based on the kind of assumptions and the information we have today. And he was going to go from being, this cash rich person that was saving 80% of his capital to break even on his cash flows, on his like income to what it was going out. And guess what? We ended the conversation. I sent the different scenarios of like what, the two kind of outcomes that we were talking about at the time, which was actually equity, like liquid assets versus basically borrowing to get the home. And that was kind of two scenarios. Obviously, from a cash flow perspective, it was nice. But there are other reasons why you'd buy a home, like certainty, and it's not just about money, right? But the cash flow thing stuck out to him, and then I met with him again. He was like, "Oh yeah, I'm thinking of buying a business with the money I had as a deposit, because then that can generate me cash flow, which I can then set aside to actually buy assets or supplement my income if I want to go abroad." So I was like, "Oh, that is awesome," and that to me was really cool, because I feel like a lot of people, especially in our generation and a little bit younger, feel this kind of pressure and inadequacy around property, because a lot of people feel like they can't do it, or that it's too expensive, or even if they're in a situation where they may do more than they need to because it needs to be the right size home, or they should borrow as much as they can. And I think that it's really cool just being like, well, here are the numbers. And, there's not one path. There are many paths. But anyway, I really like that kind of focus around cash flow, because it really is, it's just about pressure and like that freedom piece that you get. Because, it's like scuba diving, but you've got 3 tanks of oxygen waiting there for you, so you can stay there longer, right? So, that's really awesome. I know you don't like talking about 5 years, and I agree. I think that you need a longer time horizon. But 5 years is also you can get quite a lot done in 5 years. Because if you think about it, you'll be 15 years in business. What would be some nice, on your way to your 40-year plan, what would be some nice kind of, you sit back in 5 years from today and you go, oh, yeah, we've executed on these things and that they're in place. What would kind of 3 things be that in 5 years you'd be like, okay, yep, this is kind of checked off, or this is at this stage, etc.
It's a really good question. When I look 5 years out and I go, what is success in 5 years from now? Or what does it look like in 5 years that we don't have at the moment? And there's less, the further out you go, I find there's less clarity and specificity, right?
Yeah, you can't do a number
and threads. It's about going 5 years from now, the the agency is operating autonomously of Lucy and I. And so it's a business that we're involved in as directors, right? And is generating more cash for us personally than it does at the moment. Right? Then when I look at lifestyle, I don't think in 5 years we're sitting there going, oh, we're location independent, we're what is it, financially independent, retire early. I don't think we're there in 5 years because of what we want to do, but I think 5 years from now we have enough safety net cash flow that we can survive without working. That's the that's the goal, is really going, we have enough income generating activities that we can survive without work, not thrive. Down to a secondhand Camry, go live somewhere a little bit cheaper, and we can get by off what we've generated so far. And I would say it's a little bit more esoteric, but we as a couple have more ease. We feel like there's less of the pressure to do things that we need to do because we have to generate cash. And we're able to do more of the things that we want to do because we feel like long terms are the right thing to do. And that's for me what wealth is. I grew up with no wealth, and I grew up in an environment where freedom wasn't abundant, and where there wasn't the choices to do necessarily the things you wanted to do, or even the right thing, or provide for the people you wanted to. And so I always looked at it like, for me, 5 years from now, it's like, we probably have some nicer things. We've built, probably onto like our second or third build, because we love it. We love the process of building houses. But actually where we are is we have the space and the room to like be a better couple, because the pressure and the stress of finances has kind of dissipated.
That totally makes sense based on where you guys are at, right? And the age and stage of where you guys are. It's basically, right now, still a business in just under 10 years is still not like, it's not free.
No.
Nothing's free in business, especially. But I think there was definitely a sense towards less operating in that business day to day, and probably focusing more on stuff that builds long-term equity value. Because it's more stimulating probably than the thing that got you to the dance. And totally more fun. But what you got, we often forget what got us to the dance. Many ways in life, right? So we often forget it's good fundamentals that get you into a good spot, and you should always try and maintain those good fundamentals. And that's kind of what you were saying, is like, we want those fundamentals to persist. And if we decided that we needed to take 2 years off, we would just have to make some adjustments to our lifestyle, and life would still be good. And that kind of comes to that general thread of freedom. Like, I have the freedom to choose that I actually am going to take a step back and reduce my lifestyle so that I can basically not be running so fast. That's really cool. So we didn't step on this too much, but I think it's quite a cool place to end. And I think it's quite a cool place to give some insights. Even though I think that potentially I'm dropping the ball by not talking about maybe marketing or growth or kind of something more creative. But I think that's true. But what I think is quite interesting is the strong bond that you have built with your wife, and then the ability to work together. And a lot of people talk about, don't do business with family or friends because it ruins everything. And I kind of feel like that's a bit of a cop-out, and I think that's a kind of a limiting belief, perhaps. So why don't you help give the audience some confidence, perhaps, by saying, well, there's no guarantee, but, here's how we've done it. or here are 3 things that we've done that have really helped our relationship and enabled us to go on this amazing journey together. Because I say, look, building a good business, you know, you only get a few cracks at it in life because, you know, there's time. And it's in often most entrepreneurs' life, it's like it's the highlight of their lives in many cases. So why not do it with someone that you love and someone that you're close to and someone that you're like that would go to war with you? So explain.
It's being recently, we've been together for I think 9 years, right? Since Backbone was a little baby, we kind of met in its infancy, and Lucy and I got married a week ago, and many jokes were made by our celebrant at the fact that we weren't in a rush to get married. And growing up with parents who were priests, like the gravitas of marriage was like, I was aware of it, you know, like I was aware of what marriage meant to them and and then that became what it meant to me. It was something very serious. And so for me, I wanted to be locking in an upward trend, which is a little bit of an analytical way to look at it. But I really wanted to feel like we'd hit our stride in business, hit our stride in love, hit our stride in our relationship. And we were heading up in every area. Like we'd finally figured out who and how to be the best couple we could be, and locking that in on an upward trajectory instead of this reactionary, like, oh, we've reached this point where we've got nothing left to do next, let's get married, you know, or like everyone else is getting married, so we should do it too. So we, as a couple, we look very critically at everything. We evaluate, we think, we discuss, but I'll give you a practical set of tips. So we lean very heavily on the love languages. Such an easy and impactful thing to do. We have both gone through and done the Gallup strengths testing. And so we know each other's strengths and weaknesses and therefore can function and work together. And we've both gone through DeMartini's values methodology, and we reevaluate our values as a couple and in business relatively frequently. So we discuss each other's strengths and weaknesses. We then try to find ways to build each other's strengths and weaknesses. And that's the answer. Like if I'm critical, a lot of people are afraid of being in business with their partner because they haven't figured out like how to deal with conflict. And so if you imagine, if you've got conflict showing up and then you're coming home, like there's no coming home from work, you know, like we both live and work together. I jokingly said the other day to someone, I was like, we've probably spent more time together in 9 years than some couples spend together in 30.
Yeah, true.
We live and work together. We love hanging out together. We share hobbies. We spend our weekends in the garden, like building shit in our house. Like we're so together so often that we just have to work through conflict. And what that means is, like, I've been in therapy, you know, I've done the counseling thing. I've got a, you know, mindset NLP coach. We together have worked with a coach for 5 years. So when conflict arises, like we don't sit there and let it simmer and put it in the corner and wait till it becomes a big monster. Like identify the gremlin. We're like, oh, there's conflict here. And for me, leadership in the relationship means whenever I feel conflict, I try not to bring it into the business and into our relationship. I just take it to an external support person, whether it's a therapist, a psychologist, or my coach. You know, I'm going and being like, hey, I have this thing showing up. Like this thing's showing up for me, and I would like to work through it because I'm not being the person that I want to be in the business or in a relationship. And they become one and the same. But for all of the challenge, it becomes a superpower. Like when you're in business with your partner, no matter how bad it gets, it's shared. And at the best moments, like we get to go out and celebrate the wins, knowing deeply how impactful they are for us because it's our business. And it's very different. Like it's not something I think many people get to experience. And I think you should, if you have the strength to do that kind of work where you're like, I really want to, like, you're going to get triggered. But if you got the strength to be like, hey, I'm going to get triggered and I want to work through it, then there's so much connection, a lot of richness that comes from, being in business with, whether it's a best friend or, or your romantic partner. Like, it can be really, really impactful.
Totally. Yeah, I totally agree with that. That's a great way to end. So, hey, Nate, thanks for coming on the pod. Really appreciated it. And I look forward to getting you on again, maybe coinciding it with a new venture that you do or something like that. It could be fun.
Yeah. I would happily come on and maybe we can dive into the practicalities of marketing a little bit too.
Yeah, why not? Because a lot of people feel lost there. Awesome. Yeah. Cheers.